My wife Molly and I have been married 6 years, together 8 total. I'm 34, she's 32. We met through her older sister Christine, who was already with Trevor at the time. For context, Trevor works in commercial real estate and makes serious money. Big house, new vehicles every couple years. The whole package. And from day one, Molly's family treated Trevor like the gold standard for what a husband should be. Her mom Alice, her dad Pierce, Christine. Trevor was the benchmark I got measured against constantly. I work in logistics coordination. It pays fine, but I'm not pulling 6 figures. Molly knew exactly what I earned when we got together. No surprises. But something shifted when Christine and Trevor bought their second property. That's when comparisons got loud. Molly started making comments about our apartment, about Christine having a guest bedroom while we didn't even have a dishwasher. Little things that stacked up fast. Molly didn't just wake up one morning and decide I was beneath her. Christine fed that attitude for years. Every family dinner, every holiday, Christine would talk about their renovations and then turn to Molly with this look like she pitied her. Trevor loved it too. He'd ask what I was driving, knowing I had the same 2017 Mazda 3 since before the wedding. He'd mention his truck payment like casual conversation, knowing I had nothing to match. It was a game to both of them, and Molly slowly stopped defending me and started agreeing. 2 years ago, I hit a rough patch. My position got restructured and I took a temporary pay cut for 4 months. I told Molly immediately. Showed her the math. She told Christine. Christine told Trevor. From that point on, every interaction with her family had this undercurrent of me being the guy who couldn't keep it together. Trevor started offering career advice about how logistics guys should pivot to sales if they want to actually make something of themselves. Pierce started asking pointed questions about our savings. The pay situation stabilized. I actually got bumped up a level for how I handled the restructure. But by then, the damage in Molly's head was done. She'd filed me as the guy who almost couldn't pay bills, and Christine and Trevor made sure that label stuck. Fast forward to the dinner. Saturday in March at Pierce and Alice's house. The whole family, Christine, Trevor, Molly, me, her parents. About an hour in, Trevor starts talking about a property deal he closed. Big numbers. Everyone congratulating him. Alice going on about how proud she is. Then somehow the conversation turns and Molly starts telling the table we're behind on the electric bill. Which was true, but only because I switched autopay accounts and there was a processing delay. It was being resolved that same week. Molly didn't frame it that way. She told everyone I couldn't keep the lights on. Pierce asked if I needed help. I said no, it was handled. But Molly kept going. She said she was tired of being the only one in the family worrying about basic bills while Christine picked out countertops. She called me a failure, said I couldn't handle a household. Then she pulled my wallet from my jacket hanging on the chair and tossed it on the table. Said that was all we had to show for 6 years. Trevor picked up my wallet, opened it, looked inside, and laughed. Said Molly deserved better, and maybe she should have married someone with ambition. Christine didn't stop him. Alice stayed quiet. Pierce just sat there. I looked at Molly and she wasn't even looking at me. She was looking at Christine, waiting for her sister to validate her. I stood up, took my wallet, put my jacket on, and walked out. No yelling, no scene. Just left. Drove to my buddy Reese's place across town because I'd already been keeping a bag there for months. Months. This wasn't the first time Molly made me feel like garbage in front of her family. I'd been preparing for when I'd finally have enough. And that dinner was it. What none of them knew was that during those 2 years of being talked down to, I wasn't just sitting there absorbing it. I'd spoken to a lawyer 3 months before that dinner. I'd started separating finances, redirecting deposits, restructuring accounts, making sure that when I walked out, Molly wouldn't have access to the income she spent years complaining wasn't good enough. Every financial contribution I made to that household was about to disappear and she had zero idea. I turned my phone off at Reese's place. Didn't check it until Wednesday morning. 13 voicemails. 4 from Molly, 3 from Alice, 2 from Pierce, 2 from Christine, 2 from Trevor. I sat on Reese's couch and listened to every single one, and I wasn't surprised by a word, because I'd been waiting for this exact moment for a very long time. I'll post the update soon because what those voicemails said and what I did when I finally responded, that's where this really starts. 6 people at a dinner table and not one of them, not his wife, not her parents, not anyone, had the basic human decency to say, hey, maybe let's not do this. A stranger on the street would show more respect. You stub your toe in front of your worst enemy, and they'd at least wince. But Trevor, a grown man, picks up another man's wallet, opens it, looks inside, and laughs. And the room just lets it happen. That is not a family dinner. That is a roast where only one person didn't know they were the target. And Molly, She wasn't even looking at her husband after she detonated his dignity. She was looking at Christine for a gold star. She traded her marriage for her sister's approval and didn't even notice the exchange rate. But honestly, what gets me is this man had a bag at Reese's place for months. He wasn't spiraling. He wasn't blindsided. He was running a quiet countdown, and every single person at that table thought he was just the pushover absorbing it. They mistook his patience for weakness, and that is a dangerous miscalculation. Update 1. All right. You guys wanted the voicemails and what happened after. Buckle up because the 4 days between me walking out and turning my phone back on were apparently absolute chaos on their end. The voicemails. Molly's 4 messages went from annoyed to panicked over Saturday night to Monday. First one was her saying, I was being dramatic and to come home so we could talk like adults. Second one, Sunday morning, she's asking where I'm staying, saying she called Reese but he didn't pick up, because I'd already told Reese not to answer anyone from her side. Third was Monday. Now she's upset because the rent autopay bounced. See, what Molly didn't realize was that I'd rerouted my direct deposit 2 pay cycles earlier into a separate account only I had access to. My lawyer told me to do that months ago, so when rent tried to pull from the joint account, there was nothing there. And Molly's part-time income wasn't covering it alone. Fourth voicemail, Monday night. She wasn't angry anymore. She was asking me to please just explain what happened with the bank account because the landlord sent a late notice. Good. That was exactly the point. Alice's messages were classic mom-in-law. First saying I needed to come back because marriage is about compromise. Second telling me Molly was crying and I was selfish for disappearing. Third, this is where it gets interesting. Alice admitted the dinner got out of hand and said Pierce wanted to talk man-to-man about smoothing things over. No apology, though. Not from Alice, not from Pierce. Just smooth it over, sweep it under, come back and be the quiet son-in-law. Christine's 2 voicemails were short. She said Molly was a mess and asked if I was really going to blow up my marriage over one bad dinner. One bad dinner. Like this was a single event and not years of her making Molly feel like she married down. She'd spent years positioning herself as the sister who married better and now wanted to frame everything as me overreacting. Trevor's voicemails, though, those were my favorite. First one Tuesday, trying to sound casual, saying things got heated. Let's grab a beer. Like we were buddies. Like he didn't open my wallet and laugh at me. Second voicemail. Wednesday morning, completely different tone. He wanted to know if I'd talked to a lawyer because Molly mentioned me moving money. And he was asking, get this? If I planned to drag Christine into anything because their finances were linked to family arrangements with Pierce. And that is the detail I'd been waiting months to use. What I found out during my planning phase was that Trevor and Christine's fancy lifestyle wasn't as solid as they made it look. Trevor had convinced Pierce to co-sign on their second property. Pierce put up part of the down payment too, around $40,000, as a family investment. Trevor and Christine's entire image was partially built on Molly's parents' money, the same parents whose house I sat in while Trevor called me a failure. I found out about the co-sign because Molly complained about it during a fight 8 months ago. She was mad her parents helped Christine, but never offered us anything. She let slip that Pierce was on the mortgage and that Trevor had been behind on payments twice, but Pierce covered it quietly. Molly probably forgot she said it. I didn't forget. I wrote it down and started thinking about how that information fit into the bigger picture. Wednesday afternoon, after all 13 voicemails, I didn't call any of them back. I called Pierce directly. Not to yell. I calmly told him I was filing for divorce. My lawyer had started paperwork, and during the process, I'd be requesting full financial disclosure from Molly, which would include any shared family financial arrangements. I told him I knew about the cosign and Trevor's missed payments. I told him I knew he used retirement savings for that down payment. All of it would become part of the legal record. Pierce went quiet. Then he started talking fast. We don't need lawyers. Families handle things internally. He and Alice just want everyone to get along. I told him I wasn't interested in getting along. I told him he sat at his own table and watched a man open my wallet and mock me and said, nothing, so he doesn't get to talk about family anymore. I told him everything about Trevor's financial arrangement was coming out and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Then I hung up. Pierce called Trevor immediately. I know because Reese's neighbor works with someone in Trevor's office, and word got back within a day that Trevor was making panicked calls all afternoon. His perfect image, the big real estate success story, was about to get exposed as partially funded by his father-in-law's retirement money. In their circle, that kind of thing sticks. More coming. Because what happened when Molly showed up at Reese's apartment, that's a whole other level. This man is playing chess on a board these people didn't even know existed. Trevor's whole identity for 6 years was, I'm the successful one, I'm the provider, I'm the alpha at the dinner table. And the whole time, Daddy-in-law's retirement fund was keeping the lights on at property number 2. That is poetry. The entire family built a pecking order around money. Who has it? Who doesn't? Who's worthy? Who's a failure? And the one person they all agreed was at the bottom just flipped the scoreboard over. And I love how every voicemail tells you exactly who these people are. Molly goes from, "You're being dramatic," to "Please explain the bank account" in 3 days. Because she never valued his presence, she valued his deposits. Christine calling it one bad dinner is the most telling line in this whole story because that's how normalized the abuse was. It was wallpaper to her. Trevor going from "let's grab a beer bro" to "did you talk to a lawyer in 12 hours? That's the fastest character arc I've ever seen. And Pierce, the silent patriarch who watched his son-in-law get humiliated at his own dinner table, suddenly wants to handle things as a family when his secrets are on the line. They all wanted family when it was convenient, and now family is the thing that's going to bury them. Update 2. So a lot of you called it. Molly did show up at Reese's apartment, Thursday evening, 5 days after the dinner. Reese texted me from the parking lot saying Molly's car was outside. I told him to let her in because I was ready for this conversation. I'd been ready. She came in and immediately started with how I was destroying everything over one dinner, how I was punishing her for venting, how every couple argues about money and I was turning it into something bigger than it was. She kept saying I embarrassed her by walking out, that Pierce and Alice spent all week asking her what she did wrong, and that Christine kept calling her saying the family was falling apart because of me. So in Molly's version of events, she humiliates me at a dinner table in front of 6 people and somehow I'm the one who caused the damage by leaving. Classic. I let her talk for a while because I wanted to hear exactly how she'd reframe what happened. And she did exactly what I expected. She minimized everything. The wallet thing was just her being frustrated. Trevor was just joking. Christine wasn't comparing us. She was just sharing her life. It was a coordinated downplay of 2 years of treatment and she actually believed it. That's what got me. She wasn't even lying to manipulate me. She genuinely thought that's what happened. Christine had spent so long normalizing the disrespect that Molly couldn't even see it anymore. So I told her the truth. I told her I'd already filed for divorce. I told her the joint account was empty because I moved my income weeks ago. I told her I wasn't coming back to the apartment, that I'd already arranged to get my things with Reese while she was at work. And I told her that during the divorce process, the financial disclosure was going to include Pierce's co-sign on Trevor's property and every payment Pierce made on Trevor's behalf. Molly went from defensive to frantic in about 30 seconds. She started saying I couldn't bring her parents into this, that Pierce would be devastated, that their financial situation with Trevor was private family business. And I told her that's interesting because for 6 years she had no problem making my financial situation public family business at every dinner table. She didn't have an answer for that. Then she tried a different angle. She said if I went through with the divorce and exposed the co-sign arrangement, Christine would never forgive her because Christine didn't know that Molly had told me about it. So now I'm learning that Molly telling me about the co-sign was itself a betrayal of Christine's trust, which means Christine had specifically told the family to keep that information private, which means the whole family knew Trevor's success was inflated, and they all agreed to protect that image, the same image they used to make me feel small for years. I'm going to be honest. That detail made me angrier than the dinner itself. They all knew Trevor was propped up by Pierce's money, and they still let him sit there and mock me for not being successful enough. Every comparison, every pointed comment, every look Christine gave Molly, they were comparing me to a guy whose lifestyle was subsidized, and they all knew it. And nobody, not Molly, not Alice, not Pierce, ever said a word. So I told Molly that Christine's forgiveness wasn't my problem. I told her that every person at that table participated in humiliating me, either actively or by staying silent, and now every person at that table was going to deal with the consequences. I wasn't interested in protecting anyone's secrets. Molly left Reese's apartment, and the next morning I got a text from Trevor. Not casual anymore, not "let's grab a beer, Trevor." He was angry. He told me that if I mentioned the co-sign situation to anyone or let it come out in court documents, he would make sure I regretted it. He said Pierce was already stressed and that I was tearing a family apart over my ego. My ego. The guy who opened my wallet at a dinner table and laughed is talking to me about ego. I screenshotted that text and sent it to my lawyer, because threatening someone during active divorce proceedings is exactly the kind of thing that looks terrible on paper, and my lawyer confirmed that. Trevor just handed me leverage and didn't even realize it. But here's where it gets complicated and why I need this update. Pierce called me Friday afternoon. And unlike every other conversation, this one was different. Pierce wasn't trying to smooth things over. He was asking me, practically begging, to keep the co-sign arrangement out of the divorce paperwork. He said if that information became part of any legal filing, his accountant had told him there could be tax implications because of how he structured the down payment gift. He said Alice didn't know the full amount he pulled from their retirement and that this would cause problems in his own marriage. So now I've got Pierce's marriage potentially on the line too. Alice doesn't know how much Pierce gave Trevor. Christine doesn't know Molly told me about the cosign. Trevor is sending threats over text. Molly is panicking about losing both her marriage and her sister. And I'm sitting in Reese's living room with every single piece of information I need to make all of it collapse. And yeah, I plan to. Final update coming because the meeting with all of them, that's the part you're really going to hear. This entire family was running on secrets, like layers and layers of them. Pierce is hiding money from Alice. Christine is hiding Trevor's failures from the family. The whole family is hiding Trevor's subsidized lifestyle from the outside world. And they all collectively hid the truth from the one person they decided was the weakest link. They built a whole ecosystem of lies and the foundation of it was, well, at least we're better than Molly's husband. He was the floor they all stood on to feel tall. And now the floor is moving. And Molly. I keep coming back to Molly because she is the most tragic figure in this and she doesn't even know it. Christine turned her own sister into a weapon against her own marriage. She poisoned Molly's perception of her husband so slowly and so thoroughly that Molly threw her marriage into a wood chipper thinking she was just venting. Molly wasn't a villain. She was a puppet. But that doesn't make her less responsible. You still pulled the trigger even if someone else loaded the gun. And Trevor. This man sent a threatening text during active divorce proceedings. In what universe do you put a threat in writing to someone you know has a lawyer? That's not confidence. That's someone who's been so untouchable for so long that he forgot what accountability feels like. He's about to get a refresher course. Final update. Last update. A lot happened, and I want to get it all down while it's fresh. So after Pierce's call begging me to keep the cosign out of the paperwork, I sat on it for 2 days. Not because I was undecided, I knew exactly what I was doing, but because I wanted them all to sit in it. I wanted every single one of them checking their phones, waiting for my next move, not knowing what was coming. The same way I sat at their dinner tables for years, not knowing when the next comparison or the next jab about my income was coming. I wanted them to feel that. Monday morning, I texted Molly, Christine, Trevor, Pierce, and Alice in a group text. I told them I wanted to meet at Pierce and Alice's house that evening at 7. All of them. I said I had things to say and I was only going to say them once. Molly texted back within a minute asking what this was about. Christine responded saying she didn't think a group meeting was appropriate. Trevor didn't respond at all. Pierce just sent back okay. Alice sent a long message about how she hoped we could resolve this peacefully. I showed up at 7 with a folder. Inside was a printout of Trevor's threatening text to me, a copy of the divorce filing, and a summary my lawyer prepared outlining what financial disclosures would be required during proceedings, including any co-signed debts or gifted down payments involving family members of either spouse. All of it legal, all of it factual, all of it devastating for the people sitting in that living room. Everyone was already there when I walked in. Trevor was standing by the kitchen counter with his arms crossed, doing his best to look unbothered. Christine was on the couch next to Molly. Pierce was in his recliner, and Alice was in the dining chair she always sits in. Nobody said anything when I came in. I started with Trevor. I put the printout of his threatening text on the coffee table and told everyone in the room that Trevor had threatened me in writing during active divorce proceedings and that my lawyer had already flagged it. I told them that threatening a party during legal proceedings doesn't just look bad. It gets entered into the record and it influences how judges view credibility. Trevor started to respond, saying I was twisting a private conversation, but I cut him off and told him he sent it in writing so there's nothing to twist. Then I turned to Pierce. I told him and Alice together that during the divorce, the court would require full financial disclosure, and that included the $40,000 he gave Trevor for the down payment on the second property. I told them the cosign would be part of the record. I watched Alice's face because based on what Pierce told me on the phone, she didn't know the full amount, and I was right. Alice immediately turned to Pierce and asked him what $40,000 he was talking about because she thought he'd only given them $15,000. Pierce started trying to explain, but Alice was already doing the math on what that meant for their retirement, and she was not calm about it. Christine stood up and told me I had no right to air their private family finances. I told her she was absolutely right. It is private. The same way my salary and my wallet and my electric bill were private before she and Trevor and Molly turned them into dinner entertainment for 2 years. I told her that she spent years building herself up by tearing me down, comparing her husband's income to mine every chance she got. And now she gets to find out what it feels like when someone puts your finances on display for the whole family to see. Trevor tried to take control of the room. He told Pierce they should get their own lawyer and that I was trying to manipulate the situation. I told Trevor he should absolutely get a lawyer because he's going to need one. Not because of me, but because Pierce is now going to want to know exactly where his 40,000 went and whether that second property is actually worth what Trevor told him it was. I told him that from where I'm sitting, it looked like Trevor's entire lifestyle was a performance funded by his father-in-law, and now every person in this room knew it. Molly was quiet through most of this. When I finally looked at her, she asked me if there was any way we could work this out, if I would consider stopping the divorce. I told her no. I told her I spent 6 years watching her choose her sister's approval over her own husband, and the night she threw my wallet on a table and called me a failure in front of everyone was the night she confirmed what I already knew, that I would never be enough in her eyes because she was measuring me against a standard that was fake to begin with. I left the folder on the table and walked out, not because I was done talking, but because everything I needed to say was in that room and in those documents. My lawyer is handling the rest. Since then, Pierce and Alice have been fighting about the retirement money. Trevor and Christine are dealing with Pierce now, demanding a formal accounting of the property investment. Molly has been texting me every day, but I haven't responded because there's nothing left to discuss. And I'm still at Reese's place, sleeping fine for the first time in years. Funny thing is, 6 years ago, Molly told me I'd never amount to anything if I didn't start making real money. And now every person who laughed at my wallet is dealing with consequences that no amount of money can fix. Turns out the guy who couldn't pay the bills could still burn the whole thing down. This man walked into the same living room where he got humiliated, sat in front of the same people, and systematically returned every single ounce of pain they'd given him, with receipts. And he did it without raising his voice. That's the part that makes this hit different. He didn't flip a table. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just laid documents down like a dealer flipping cards and watched everyone's hand collapse. The symmetry is almost cinematic. They used money to make him feel worthless, and he used their own financial secrets to unravel every relationship in that room. Christine telling him he has no right to air private finances. I need that framed. I need it in a museum. The audacity of spending 2 years turning someone's paycheck into a spectator sport and then clutching pearls when the spotlight swings back. And Alice finding out in real time that Pierce gave away 25,000 more than she knew about. Pierce spent years sitting silently while this man got torn apart at his own dinner table, and now his own wife is doing the math on their retirement and realizing she married a liar too. Every single domino fell because these people built their entire family dynamic on one agreement, that this man was beneath them. They needed him to be the failure so Trevor could be the success, so Christine could feel superior, so Molly could have something to bond with her sister about, so Pierce could feel like at least one daughter married well. He was the sacrifice that kept the whole illusion running. And the second he stopped volunteering for that role, the illusion ate itself.